Coming up on the program today, we're starting seeds indoors, the techniques that you need to follow, as well as, if you don't, what you need to know before you buy them at your local garden center.
And where to put your compost pile. Not necessarily what goes in it, but where to put it.
Our guest this week is Joel Karsten. He's the author of the Square Bill Garden Book, a unique way of growing your vegetables whether you have land or not.
All that and a whole lot more.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is permeating into your ears with your host, Joey Bear.
And it could be the weeds. Some gardeners try to get all the weeds out of their garden. Other gardeners leave them in their garden. It's really a decision that you need to make. There's benefits to both sides of that. It's just something that you need to figure out what you want to do for your garden.
And Holly Bear.
Canning is a science. When you're canning, you want to make sure you follow the directions, follow the recipe, don't cut corners, don't replace things. It's crucial to you, your health, and your family.
They're professional gardeners with full-time jobs, and they're on the air now.
Welcome, friends, to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, a podcast for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. If you're tuning in, you want to know about gardening, you want to learn more about gardening, or you want to know where to start. I am your host, Joey Baird, and alongside is my wife, best friend, and co-host,
Holly Baird.
Behind the TWVG microphone here at the WI Garden Media Studios in Southeast Wisconsin. The information of this program is valuable. You just may have to tweak a little bit of the dates that you apply it to. If you're tuning into this program, you probably know who we are. But if you're listening for the very first time because you saw the keyword Wisconsin or vegetable garden or it came up in a search, well, we're going to tell you just briefly about who we are, and then we're going to dive directly into the program to help you be a better gardener. If you don't know who we are the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. It's a website for anybody who gardens worldwide. We offer you a variety of different mediums to help you be a better gardener.
That's right. So we have our weekly videos, and we have a few of those. One is on Tuesday. It's our main show, the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. And this is information for gardeners of all levels. Also includes information about what to do with the food you grow, including canning and cooking.
We also have a quick tip throughout the week. We got some garden trivia going on. We also have a straight to the point, which is a very quick, fast-paced episode video on Sundays, as well as we have a free downloadable digital quarterly magazine on our website that we produce quarterly that contains a lot of information. We do it all in-house. We don't outsource it. Everything is in the magazine we have wrote, and maybe there's some typing errors, so you know it's real and not made from a group of high-ranking officials. And we do this podcast for you so you can get more information into your ears. So let's dive right in the program. Let's talk about starting seeds. We are at the beginning portions of seed starting, and there's some things you need to know about starting seeds indoors.
So, when you start seeds indoors, you want to start them in plenty of time before your last frost date.
And this will vary across the country. You want to first find out when your last average frost date is by going to your favorite search engine and typing in last average frost date for zip code and insert your zip code. Once you've established that, then you can kind of work on what seeds you're going to start. For example, brassicas, the broccoli, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. Peppers, 10 to 12 weeks. Tomatoes, 6 to 8 weeks. Onions, about 14 weeks before your last frost date. So these are keys. But also, before we even get to that point, let's find out what we want to grow versus what we can maybe, if we want to save space inside, if we don't have a whole lot of space to start seeds inside, where we want to start them indoors, and what we want to start indoors, and what we like to eat is the main point of this whole thing.
Right. So say you don't really care for tomatoes and you grow a bunch of tomatoes, maybe you don't use them. So you got to think about that. Say, okay, my grandma grew XYZ, cucumbers, tomatoes, green beans, but you don't necessarily like all that, then you want to make sure you grow things you like, try new things, do some research. Just because you have some soil to grow in doesn't mean you can grow an avocado tree.
Now, growing inside, there's some techniques of how to start. And you don't need grow lights. We didn't have grow lights for many years.
Right.
We had one of them little mini pop-up greenhouses. We sat beside a West facing window, and it got the evening sun, and we just rotated the trays around. So it's not something that's mandatory, because you can spend a lot of money on grow lights. I'm talking, if you really want to get good, you can spend $200, $300, $400, $500 investment on grow lights. Now, we've got a T5 grow light. That's just the diameter of the bulb is about the size of a dime. It has 8 sets of lights. It puts off a lot of lumens. Lumens is just a industry term about how much brightness that comes off the lights, okay? You can do this with shop lights. You can do this just with, ordinary window light. So it's not something you need is lights. But you want to figure out how much to start of any type of seed. So by starting, we encourage, for our experience, we've been gardening, for a number of years, so we understand what we need to start versus what, is going to die off possibly, or fell out of the container and snap off, while we're in transit. We always start 3/4 more than what we think. If we need 15 tomato plants, two-thirds we start. Mm-hmm. If we need 15 tomato plants, we'll probably start about 60. Just to make sure we have plenty of tomato plants. And then as the season progresses, we have a spot here or there or an extra container, we can throw them in. But you want to figure out the space that you're going to start your seeds in, so you have maximum space, so you're not overwhelmed. We've been overwhelmed before.
Right. If you got too many seeds, you're gonna feel overwhelmed, just like that. You're gonna feel like, where am I going to put all these seeds? Where you feel like you're being encroached by the seedlings. So that's something you want to think about.
So we have there's a number of methods of seed starting. The ones that we follow, and you can find a lot of these on our video series, we start with plastic 9-ounce, 12-ounce, and 16-ounce cups. That's the start. We fill them with good organic compost from SueCompost.com. Then we put about 8 to 10, based on the variety of seeds. Peppers, we put 5 seeds in each cup. Tomatoes, we put 5 seeds in each cup. Brassicas, we'll put 10 seeds in each cup. And this is not their home. This is to get them established to 2 or 3 inches tall. Once they've gotten to that establishment, you're not putting one seed in a cell and maybe waiting for it to germinate, and sometimes it doesn't. So you're utilizing the space you have by putting them in all these cups. Once you get them established, then you can move them to your seed starting trays. We're fond of root maker trays, because they self-prune the roots. And if you've gardened any time at all, there's 2 things you need to know about gardening. 1, you need to have good soil. And 2, you need to have good roots on your plants to go into that good soil.
Right. So that's something you want to think about, is what you're going to start them in, how you're going to start them, how many you're going to start, and what you're going to start.
Now, if done right, you don't have to start them. You don't have to start any seeds at all. You can go to your local home and garden center and purchase the plants that are already established, or the starts. You can do this. If you don't want to start, if you're in a place that doesn't have the capabilities of starting seeds. There's some things you need to know, and there's also some disadvantages to buying starts from your local garden center too. One being the lack of varieties that are available at that garden center. Right.
There's not going to be, for example, we planted 20-some different varieties of tomatoes last year. You're probably going to find maybe 10 at a garden center. Maybe. So you got to think about that. Also, you're going to find your standard peppers, standard hot peppers, maybe what's that?
Broccoli, kale, cauliflower.
Yeah. So if you like a specific kind of hot pepper, if you like, maybe you want to grow okra, you might not be able to find okra where you are. So you want to think about that also.
Now, there's nothing wrong with buying the seeds at the garden center. We've done that. What we have found to be the disadvantage, in addition to what we just mentioned, was you don't know who's handled these seeds or these seedlings. They can look rough. You don't know what's been sprayed on them, because nurseries and garden centers, they will sometimes will spray the plants with not just water, but a liquid inorganic fertilizer to make the plants look all happy and wonderful before you buy them. And then you get them home and then they come out of a shock because they're not getting that regular nutrient fix of that inorganic fertilizer. You also can find, now they're coming up with more varieties of sweet corn and okra and green beans. These are seeds that are best started in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You can start them in containers. We've started corn in containers, was fairly successful at it. But also, we were putting one seed per container. These ones that you get at the garden center have 8 or 10 corn stalks that are about 4 inches tall in a 3-inch container. So these plants can be already stressed out. But one of the challenging things that it comes to is, you spoke about peppers, Holly. Peppers can be very tough to get started. So by buying them, that eliminates that challenge of trying to buy it.
Especially, and also, yeah, they're harder to get started, but if you're looking for a pepper that's a special hot pepper, and you want to grow hot peppers, a certain kind, whether it be habanero or some sort of ghost,
Brainstream,
Brainstream, whatever, you're going to have to maybe kind of invest your time into starting your own seeds, because you're not going to necessarily find those at the local garden center.
But if you're a new gardener,
if you're a new gardener, mm-hmm.
the best thing to do is go to the garden center and find out what varieties are out there. Grab a seed catalog, look online, see what grows well in your area, first of all.
Right.
And then when you get these seeds or these plants at the garden center, don't be afraid to tip them out of their container and see what that root ball system looks like. Because in some instances, if it's later on in the season and they've dropped these prices to like 97% off, buy 12, get 27 free,
mm-hmm.
the roots are already root bound. The plant is already stressed. And what you're doing is you're just giving money to that garden center so you can take the plant home and let it die in your garden, because the plant has already been stressed out. You see these tomato plants, and you've been there with me. They're about a foot tall. They've got little cherry tomatoes on it, and they're trying to get rid of them for $1. We bought them. It didn't work.
No.
They died, or they got stressed out because the transplant shock, because the root ball has been, it's been root bound and it's been stressed out. So we hope that some of the information that we were able to inform you of can help you be a better seed starter and better at buying those starts at the garden center. We'll be right back after this timeout.
It's all about the soil at ManureT.com. With their grass-fed, antibiotic, and growth hormone-free cattle and horses, owner Annie Haven puts the quality in her premium soil conditioner. 100% organic and natural, whether feeding your flowers or veggies, indoors or out, you can grow organically with confidence. To purchase authentic Haven brand Manure Tea, small orders or large, go to ManureT.com. Always free shipping. A gardener knows that the key to a good plant is its roots. With poor roots, the end result is not good. Conventional pots and trays cause roots to wrap around and become root bound. Then you try to unwrap the roots at the time of planting, hoping not to break them. But never again with the Root Maker, a non-chemical innovation that naturally air prunes roots to create more vigorous roots. Never a root bound plant again. Whether trees, flowers, or edibles, home garden or commercial grower, more roots means healthier, more productive plants. To get your own, visit rootmaker.com.
Kapow is an American company that grew out of the need to develop an everyday product that would help us decrease our eco footprint. Utilizing the mason jar as its foundation, Kapow has created accessories turning your mason jar into a multi-use device. Drinking lids and lunchbox adapters, plus so much more. Made entirely in the USA from carefully selected food-safe plastic that is just the right thickness for both durability and ease of use. For hot and cold beverages, certified safe for all ages and dishwasher safe too. Get your Kapow accessories. Visit kapow.com.
Hi, this is Chris Van Cleve, host of the Rose Chat Podcast. You can hear us at rosechatpodcast.com. But right now, we're going to talk vegetables, and you're listening to Joy and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
So you remember those pepper plants that were at the garden center that was like mature and had peppers on them? Mm-hmm. And it was like $27, and it was like instant peppers. Welcome back to the program, everybody. We were talking about some of those mature plants you see at your garden center the day that everything gets to the garden center, and they're like $27, so you can go home and say, hey, I just picked a ripe tomato, and it's like March 14th. If you want to know more about the sponsors you've just heard and an entire sponsor lineup, you can go to the website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, and click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. You can also check the show notes for this particular broadcast. Support them. Check them out because they support us and believe in the same gardening beliefs as we do. We're going to talk about compost right now.
That was like March 14th.
It was right in that area. It was.
No, it's like May 14th.
May 14th. It was far too early. We're going to talk about compost now. Not so much the building blocks and of compost, but more of where that compost pile maybe should be.
I love compost.
Yeah, compost is the building blocks of the garden. There's many different compost piles, many different composters. But let's talk about the importance of, if possible, putting that compost pile directly on the soil. And I know it's not possible for everybody because of rules, regulations, homeowners associations, and where you live. Sometimes that's not allowed.
Right. So you want to make sure that you can have a compost pile. I recently did some research for school and found out in our direct community that it's not very much encouraged to have a compost pile. They don't necessarily want you to, but then there's a community just north of us that has all this information on their city's website about how to build a compost pile. So you want to make sure that you can have a compost pile. That's what I'm getting to here. So you want to make sure also some municipalities require you to keep it in a bin off the ground. Some don't care, so that you're in luck there. Some require you to have it be contained with maybe some chicken wire or something. So you want to look into that. Now, if you do have to keep it into a bin or maybe keep it into a big garbage pail, you want to buy one with like the locking handles so you can roll it occasionally.
Now, whenever you did your studies, why was some of the towns wanting that in confinement? Why did they not want to have wildlife? Mm-hmm. And there is benefits to having an open pit or having direct contact with the native soil, because there's a lot of microorganisms that help break down that compost that go from the compost to the soil.
Right.
So where is the best place that one could have, if allowed, to have an open pit or an open pile compost?
Just anywhere that you want to have it. You want to make sure that obviously it's not unsightly to you. If you are afraid, if you live in a somewhat more rural area and you are afraid of attracting wildlife, what you could do is you could just make sure it's fenced in pretty well and keep it maybe further away from your house.
Well, also the additional wildlife kind of helps stir it up too.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in an urban area or a rural area, you can have that compost pile and rotate it through your growing area in your garden. Each year, move it 10 feet this way or 10 feet that way to help build up that microorganism levels in the soil. Now, if you can't, or it's not recommended, or it's frowned upon to have an open pit or open pile compost, you can get a trash can, one of them heavy-duty trash cans. And if you want to have direct contact with the soil, there's some techniques here that you can follow. Cut the bottom off that trash can, set it directly on where you're gardening at. You won't be able to tip it over and mix it up, but you can kind of maybe nestle it in the soil 4, 5, 6 inches, so it looks like it's just setting on the soil.
But do this late at night so your neighbors can't see you.
Right. Well, yeah. but it's a way to get around some of these rules that high-ranking officials have put into place because they think they know what's best for you and I.
And I guarantee you they're not going to fine you. They're just going to send you a letter saying, "Dear sir, we've noticed that you're composting illegally," or whatever it's called, composting legally. "Dear sir, please take care of your situation." And I guarantee you, it's not some city worker. It's some nosy neighbor who is like, "Hey, what you got going on over there, Fred?" So you want to make sure that if you do that illegally, that maybe you make sure Fred's out of town,
right?
Or Bob, or whoever.
Right. But if you're going to do an open pit, you can, like you said chicken wire. You can also take pallets.
Yeah, pallets.
Pallets work very well, and they're not unsightly. If done right, they look very, very nice.
Yeah.
You just don't want the old ratty, stained up pallets. You want, and you can, I guess you can coat these with Timber Pro UV coating. You can cut whatever you have, but you can make these look very nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, 20 years ago, where we lived in the city and we had a compost pile, we didn't consult anybody. We just had it behind the garage, and then we would throw sunflower seeds in there, and they would grow beautiful sunflowers.
But also 20 years ago, there was not the people that wanted to control everybody either.
That's true.
So if you can't if you can't have an open pit compost pile, well, let's start with this question here. When we have a compost pile, whether it's contained, open pit, tumbler, we want it in direct sunlight.
Yeah.
Because compost needs that heat to warm up. It naturally will heat up because of the breakdown of the browns, the greens, the carbons, and the nitrogen, the natural breakdown process. But it helps if you have a little extra outside warmth to get in there and just kind of keep it warm. That's my thinking of it. Put it in the sunlight so it has more warmth to it. Also, you want to turn it frequently. If you start turning the compost, we've had this where we've turned the compost. We have 2 compost piles. We have an open area, and we have it in a trash can with holes, half-inch holes all around it for aeration. We've turned the compost in the trash can, and it is very aerobic. It really, it stinks. That's because if you have that problem, that's because it's not getting enough oxygen. It's lack of oxygen in there, and that's what's causing that stink. Just like if you've grown up on a farm, if you've been there, when they turn over the cattle lot, that fragrance is very, very rich because the oxygen can't get down to the bottom of the pile to allow it to break down. So you want to have a lot of oxygen, you want to have proper moisture in it, and you want to turn it frequently. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about if we have tumblers or other different tumblers is kind of an easier way for those who maybe have mobility issues when it comes to composting or the lazy gardener.
Right, a tumbler is basically a trash can on its side with a little opening, and then you just dump your compost in there and you turn it every whatever, and it does speed up the process, I believe.
It does, but there's an investment there. Mm-hmm. Versus going and finding some old pallets or a roll of poultry wire, chicken wire, or making a little pile with, just whatever you have. Those compost tumblers, you're looking at $100 to $500-$600 in some cases to do, and some of them are much more stout than others. Mm-hmm. So that's something you want to look at, whether you're composting open pit or in a tumbler. Some of the placements of it and the reasons why you want to put them where you put them.
If you have mobility issues, that might be an investment for you. If you just if you like a pretty looking composter, then that might be an investment for you as well.
But the ultimate end result here is to take natural material, kitchen scraps, lawn clippings, garden waste that's not diseased, and to turn it into rich compost that you've made for free, so you can continue the cycle of growing good, healthy produce.
Yes.
Stay tuned. Coming up next, Joel Karsten will be with us, author of Square Belt Gardening Book, right after these messages.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
It's Joey
and Holly Baird
of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, taking a moment to remind you that you can sign up for a weekly email so you don't miss anything that we do, our podcast, our videos, our digital quarterly magazine. You won't miss anything by signing up.
Just go onto our website on the right-hand side. There's a big button for you to press. Just go ahead and sign up for our emails.
And you can also ask us questions. Underneath that big green button, there's a big red button. So sign up for our emails for free. No spam, and if you've got a question, you can send us that as well. WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your bare, untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatings.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas E. Welch from A Gardener's Notebook at douglasewelch.com. Whether I'm out working in the garden or dreaming of gardening during the long, cold winter nights, I love to hear what's happening in the garden with Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the program. For those of you who want to know more about the sponsor you've just heard, you can go to our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, and click on the podcast tab, and you can check out those sponsors and the whole array of sponsors who support us on the podcast, believing in the same gardening beliefs as we do. Now let's bring in our guest this week. He is from the land of 10,000 lakes. That's Minnesota, for those of you who are not familiar with that term. He is the author of Straw Bale Gardening, the breakthrough method for growing vegetables anywhere, easier, and with no weeding. Keyword there, no weeding. I want to welcome Joel Karsten to the program.
Hi, Joey. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Hi, Holly.
Well, thanks for coming on the program. Now, you've got a fantastic book here that tells the methods of square bale gardening. So, for people who are not that familiar with straw bale or hay bale or that terminology, there is a difference between hay and straw. And can you define the difference in what is required for the best results with the method of square bale gardening?
Well, the difference between straw and hay, straw is usually used for bedding material, and it's the stalk that remains after the small grain or cereal grains are harvested. So the oats, the wheat, the barley, when the seeds are removed, the stalk that's left over is baled up into small square bales or big round bales, like you see in the middle of the field sometimes, and that's usually used as bedding material for livestock. Hay is usually a fodder or a food that they give to cattle and horses and sheep, etc., livestock. It's usually baled grass or baled alfalfa. It's usually green in color, and it's more nutritious because it usually has all of the seeds included in that bale. So that's where a lot of the nutrients come from. So that's the real difference. Now, I encourage people to try to find straw bales, but there's a lot of people in southern United States and parts of the world where they don't have a lot of the cereal grains, so they don't have a lot of straw per se, but they do have lots of hay, particularly baled grass. And that seems to work as a really good substitute. The big advantage is that straw tends to hold moisture a little bit better than hay bales do. So that's the biggest advantage of straw over hay, but it's a good substitute.
Okay, so with for those who are able to find straw, is there any specific type of straw? I know we have wheat straw, sugarcane straw, rice straw, or does it work with any type of any one of those materials?
Well, it will work with any organic material that decomposes, because that's really what we're after here. What I like to use in my garden is oat straw. It has a little lower carbon percentage than wheat straw does, so it takes a little bit longer for wheat straw to break down than oat straw, but it still would work just fine if that's all you had was wheat straw or barley straw. But if you have your choice, I guess, oat straw works really well. That's probably what you'll find a lot of in Wisconsin as well, is oat straw. And any of those will work. If you get desperate and you can't find oat straw, wheat straw, or hay bales, you'll see in the latest version of my book, which is about to come out in February, you'll notice we talk about baling up other organic material. So I've done some research over the last couple of years where in some of the bales I'm not using a lot of straw at all. I'll have some leftover straw bales from the previous season, and I'll put some of that in the bale along with some leaves and some trimmings off of trees that I've done some pruning, and maybe some other things that I've trimmed around the garden, other weeds that I've pulled from other parts of my yard. I throw all of that inside of a bale, and I make my own bales that I then condition and use just like I did the straw bales originally. So it really allows a lot of flexibility in terms of what you include in that bale. But that also means that you have to make your own bales, which I go into in the book. It's a real simple process, but you need to really squeeze those bales real tightly in order to get them to decompose as we need.
That's fantastic. The first question that many of our listeners may have who do not know a farmer is, where can they find the straw bales to use for gardening?
Usually your garden center or nursery is going to have some. If you can get directly to the farmer, that's even better. If you live in a rural area at all, you'll see every once in a while when you become a straw bale gardener, as you drive around the rural areas, you'll see signs with farmers put up straw for sale. So that's, of course, a good route to go, especially if you're going to get quite a number of bales. If you're just buying one or two bales, it's probably easiest, most convenient, just to pick them up at the garden center. You're going to, obviously they have to make some money on them, so you're probably going to pay a little bit more, but if you're only buying a few bales, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, that's really what I tell people is, Craigslist is a great place to go. We have a website that we run which allows free access for anybody who wants to use it, called strawbalemarket.com, and that's for people to list and sell their straw bales, or they can go on there and find people who have straw bales for sale. And it's all searchable by geography, so you can find somebody close to you. So it makes it real convenient for people to be able to find straw bales.
Now, we'll talk about some of the methods on preparing the straw bale, but you were talking about, you may pay $3 or $4 or $5 for a square bale, but this is a very inexpensive way of gardening versus paying $3 or $4 or $5 for one piece of wood that you would need 4 or 5 pieces to make a raised bed.
Oh, sure, yeah. If you're going to build a raised bed the same size as a straw bale, the first thing you got to do is get the material to build it, and you got to take the time to build it, and time is money, of course. And then once you get it built, now you got to fill it up with something. And usually what people end up doing is either buying or manufacturing their own compost, or buying some type of fill material to put inside of that raised bed, so you get the good drainage and all the good advantages. And that can be really expensive. I mean, the size of one straw bale is about, on average, 14 cubic feet. So that would be 7 2-cubic-foot bags of potting mix. And potting mix is about $10 a bag. So, you'd easily have $70 just in the mix to fill up a container the same size as a straw bale. And the inside of that straw bale is going to become beautiful compost in a very, very short period of time once we begin conditioning the bale.
So your book goes into detail on all that, the do's and don'ts of preparing and growing in the straw bale. With that being said, once we get our straw bale, do we just go ahead and put the seeds in them, or obviously with your book you give more detail, but if you want to kind of tell us briefly.
Right. Yeah, you need to really prepare the bale. I guess I call it conditioning. For gardeners who've been around gardening for a while, they probably know what a compost pile is. That's really what's happening inside of the bale, is we're composting the inside of that bale. And nature would do it. Mother Nature would do that on her own. If we just left the bale outside exposed to the weather over a long period of time, the inside of that bale would completely decompose, and it would become soil. All we're going to do using my method is we're going to speed up that process. And we're going to do that by adding a source of nitrogen. Now, if you're an organic gardener, that's just blood meal. Works really well. It has a lot of nitrogen in it. If you're a traditional gardener, you could use lawn fertilizer if you wanted to. And that would activate the bacteria inside of that bale. And that bacteria very quickly colonizes the inside of the straw bale, populates it very quickly, and begins to consume the straw and manufactures brand new soil. Virgin soil inside the bale. So there's no lingering disease problems from last year's soil. There's no insect carryover from last year's soil. There's no fungal issues that harbor in the soil from year to year. So you get this brand new virgin soil that you're then going to plant your transplants, your bedding plants into that bale. Now, if you're going to do seeds, that's real easy. You just need to make a little thin layer on top of the bale using some sterile planting mix. Something like potting mix. You can get organic potting mix at the garden center. You put an inch or two of that potting mix on top of the bale, and then you embed your seeds right in that little surface. And very quickly those seeds will germinate, and they'll send a root down into the bale, into the nice warm bale down below. Now, in Wisconsin, just like us in Minnesota, we have to wait until mid-May usually before we can even think about putting anything out in the garden that's going to be frost sensitive. In the straw bales, it's a different story because the bale down below is decomposing and it gets really nice and toasty warm inside that bale. And that radiant heat that comes out of the bale allows us to plant a couple of weeks earlier than we normally would. And those plants are well protected when we do.
Well, and that's a fantastic thing. And our listeners, as well as us, we're all gardeners, and we all want to know, how long will the bale last, Joel? How many years can I expect to get out of one square bale that I've used for gardening? Or does it vary on climate?
Well, it does depend. And it's not necessarily the climate. The two most important factors are, number one, what crop did you plant in the bale that first year when you got the bale? If you plant something like potatoes in the bale, well, then to get the potatoes out, you basically got to destroy the bale to get at the potatoes. If you plant crops like tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, at the end of the season, you're just going to cut that vine off right at the top of the bale and leave the root inside the bale that it's established down inside the bale. And then the next season, you're going to plant a root crop. You're going to put your carrots and your turnips and your beets and your potatoes in that second year bale. Very often you can get a bale to last 2 seasons. Now, part of that also depends on what kind of bale you started out with. If you get a bale that's, I call them super bales, the bales that are really tightly squeezed. When you buy them at the garden center, you pick them up at the farm, they're real heavy, and they're hard to carry home because they're dense. They've been well squished inside that bale. That's a bale that has a lot of density and is probably going to give you 2 seasons. If you buy a bale and it's real light and easy to carry home, that bale is not very dense. It's probably only going to give you 1 season. But keep in mind, at the end of that year, you can use what's left over, which is really beautiful compost that's going to be in this little pile right there. You can use that around your garden if you want to enhance soils somewhere else. Or, as I talk about in my latest edition of my book, you can use that leftover straw to make new bales, squeeze them together with some other organic material that you've gathered around the yard, all your trimmings from the whole summer, anything that you would normally put in your compost pile, your vegetable peelings from the kitchen. All of that stuff goes into these bales. You squeeze the bales, you tie them up, and you dump the bales out, and you've got new bales for the following season out of that leftover straw. So it's really a continuous recycling.
Great information with square bale gardening. Now, your book goes into details we've talked about here, the preparation for it. Now, you've had this book out for a couple of years. You've talked to many gardeners on how they've prepared their square bale gardening. What are some of the horror stories that you have heard that they've tried to do things that you have cringed and said, no, you can't do that, whether for the preparing or for the types of things that they're growing, or some of the items they maybe try to put into the bale to allow it to break down quicker?
Well, I get all kinds of people that say, well, if I just put the bales out in the fall, then they're going to be all ready by the next spring. Mother Nature will take care of them. I hear that from people a lot. And I say, oh, no, that's really not true. Mother Nature's going to water them, but what the microbes, the bacteria inside that bale really need in order to fire up and really begin to colonize that bale is they need food. And bacteria, main source of food is nitrogen. Unless you give them some source of nitrogen. Now, if you put a bale on the soil somewhere, it's going to suck up a little bit of nitrogen from the soil. It'll literally the microbes will go into the soil beneath that bale, and they'll pull nitrogen out of the soil in order to feed themselves to begin that colonization process. So if you don't use enough nitrogen, or if you use a source of nitrogen, and I see this happen once in a while, that's a very slow release nitrogen. It essentially means that over that early spring when we're trying to feed the bacteria, they're not getting any of that nitrogen because you've put on a slow release. And I talk about that in the book, how when you go to buy nitrogen, if you're organic, it's really easy. Blood meal works just terrific, and it's widely available. You can get it almost anywhere. It works really, really well. And there's lots of other forms of organic nitrogen out there as well. What doesn't work very well for organic gardeners is using strictly manure. I get that question a lot. Can I just put cow manure or horse manure on the bales? Will that work? Well, by volume, there isn't nearly as much nitrogen in horse manure or cow manure as there is in blood meal. There's about 15 to 20 times as much nitrogen by volume in blood meal as there is in cow manure, for instance. So in order to get enough cow manure worked down into the bale to activate the bacteria, it just takes too long. And your bales will condition, but they won't be ready to plant until July or August. What we want is a bale that's going to condition and be ready to plant in 2 weeks. So we're going to start this process, and 2 weeks later, when that bale is nice and hot because that bacteria is well at work inside breaking down that bale, that's the time when we want to plant, be ready to plant. So we're going to begin the conditioning process just a couple weeks before we're intending to plant, and then we're going to catch those bales when they're at their maximum perfect temperature so that we can put those seeds right on top of the bale or the bedding plants in the bale and get all that extra growth.
Well, we want to tell our listeners where they can find your book and more information on Strawbell Gardens.
Sure. They can all go to my website, strawbellgardens.com. There's links from there to our Facebook page. We've got about 50,000 followers on Facebook that will post pictures all the time, and you can read about all the success stories. And if people have trouble or questions, those are always posted on there as well. There's links to our Twitter. There's links to our Pinterest. Links to everywhere, but you just go to strawbellgardens.com, and it leads you anywhere you need to go. And if you want to buy a copy of the book, you can buy it off of the website as well.
A lot of great information. Even if you're a first-time gardener, this would be an ideal medium to grow in. If you have mobility issues, a great, inexpensive way to get out and garden. Joel, we appreciate your time today coming on the program. Again, you can go to the website. That link is in the show notes for this episode as well.
Thank you, Joey and Holly. I really appreciate your invitation to be on your show.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll be back right after this.
Do you want your next raised beds to be easy, functional, and beautiful? The Embrace helps you create the garden you've always wanted. Finally, raised beds that everyone can assemble and enjoy. No tools needed. Just slide any lumber into the Embrace corner, fill with your favorite soil mix, and you're ready to plant. Made from 100% recycled steel right here in the USA. And a portion of every sale helps to build school and community gardens all across the country. Let the Embrace help you create your next raised bed. Grow beautifully with the Embrace. Available at local garden centers and online at artofthegarden.net.
Paradigm Gardens, Wisconsin's largest progressive gardening center. Located in Madison, Wisconsin, Paradigm Gardens offers the largest selections of soil amendments, organic and salt-based plant nutrients, grow lights, and hydroponic systems available in the Midwest. Our knowledgeable and experienced sales staff are always available to help. Visit our new website, www.paradigmgardens.com, or visit our retail store at 4501 Helgeson Drive, Madison, Wisconsin, just off Stoughton Road.
Hey everybody, this is Jared from permasapien.com, and I am all about employing permaculture wisely. Right now, you are listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Square bill gardening, that is a way that you can really, if you have mobility issues or you want more space to grow, that's a great way to do it.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. For more information on our sponsors, you simply visit our website at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and click on the podcast tab, and you can get all the information there.
Well, we want to thank Joel for coming on the program, and we're not done yet. Don't hit that stop button yet. We've got more information for you so you can be a better gardener. But first, it's Gardening in 2 Minutes. Gardening in 2 Minutes is an audio production that Holly and I produce on a weekly basis for a number of podcasts and a few radio programs. If you want Gardening in 2 Minutes on your particular program, contact us through the website. We'll be more than happy to get one to you. This Gardening in 2 Minutes is about seeds, heirloom, organic, and hybrid seeds. This Gardening in 2 Minutes is sponsored by DollarSeed.com. Holly, seeds don't have to cost a fortune, just $1 at DollarSeed.com. For your flowers, vegetables, and herbs, 172 varieties, DollarSeed.com has something for you. Here is Gardening in 2 Minutes. This is Gardening in 2 Minutes. I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
Seeds come in a couple of different categories that you may not be familiar with the terms. Heirloom, organic, hybrid, and there's also GMO. Let's discuss each one of these categories and what they truly mean.
So let's start with the original, which is heirloom. Heirloom variety is the true seed. This seed has been regrown and saved and passed on from generation to generation. It is a true seed. It is an open pollinated seed, and it has not been crossbred or cross-pollinated or anything anything like that. However, you can save them from year to year, and you can cross-pollinate heirloom seeds.
The next category is organic seeds. Now, these are slightly different than heirloom seeds.
Sometimes these are ones that have been cross-pollinated, or these are seeds that are true seeds, but this means that they were grown in organic conditions without using any sort of pesticide or harmful fungicide, herbicide.
These have been certified organic by the USDA. Then we also have hybrid seeds, and these are some of the more varieties that you'll see in your local home and garden center.
Hybrid seeds are cross-pollinated in order to generally be easier to grow. If you are a new gardener, you will find these easier to grow because they have been cross-pollinated to do so.
Specific traits captured by two different plants. By no means is this a genetic modification of the DNA. They're simply taking traits from plant A and crossing them with plant B. Nature has done this for hundreds and thousands of years. Then we'll talk about genetically modified seeds. These seeds, for the normal backyard gardener, you cannot purchase at your local home and garden center. This is for big ag only. A lot of people are concerned if they are buying genetically modified seeds. The way you know if you've bought modified seeds is if you signed a contract or promise with the seed supplier, as big ag industry must do. They cannot save the seeds. They have to sell or feed the seeds to livestock and buy new again. These seeds are copyrighted patent. For more information about seeds, our weekly video productions, as well as our free downloadable digital quarterly magazines, you can find all that information at
the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.
For Gardening in 2 Minutes, I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
We're not done yet. Don't turn the podcast off. We've got one more topic to cover before we get out of here today, and it's about water collection.
Water collection is important because you can use a natural resource, which is rain, to water your garden instead of paying for, city water or your whatever water you pay for. You can use rainwater.
Now, there's a couple of different methods of collecting rainwater, and we're not going to get in the topic of is it legal or illegal to collect the water that falls on your property. There are some places in the country where it is forbidden, frowned upon, taxable, whatever you want to call it, where government is trying to benefit and control what you do with what falls on your property. We're going to talk about the devices that would be best used or utilized in collecting the rainwater.
So you can use something as a rain barrel. You can make your own or you can purchase one. And rain barrels are nice because if you buy one pre-made, you just go ahead and you attach it to your downspout of your gutter. And then it has a spigot on the end and usually comes with a little hose so that you can drain the water out.
Now, you don't have to purchase one that's pre-manufactured. You can make one yourself out of a plastic 55-gallon drum. You can find these for free or very little cost on websites like Craigslist.org. But I will warn you, when you purchase those or find those, you want to know what the previous contents in that barrel was if you're going to use it for water collection in your garden, because you don't want to use a barrel that had some toxic sludge or oil or something that wasn't natural or food grade.
Right. And you can also use something called a rain saucer, which is basically a big funnel or if you would put this over a garbage can as well, and it funnels the water in.
A garbage can be converted into a custom-made DIY rain barrel. There's many videos online that tutorializes how to do this for very little cost.
Now, depending on where you live, you could also catch rain in a pond, like a retention pond or a reservoir, where you would basically build something out of land to catch the rain. Now, in some municipalities, this is not legal, so you would want to double check.
So we have 2 rain barrels at the large garden, and in addition to the 2 rain barrels, we use kitty litter jugs. That's the 2.5 gallon, the 3.5 gallon jugs, to where when the rain barrels get full, we put the water in the kitty litter jugs, which that gives us about 25 gallons more. So we have about 125 gallons at max capacity at the garden. Now, for those of our listeners who may not want to build a custom-make rain barrel, you can usually find them through your city for at least some kind of a discount, can you not? That's what we did on one of ours.
Right, yeah. A lot of times your city, especially around Memorial Day, If you live near a larger area, they're going to have those available for you. You have to purchase them, obviously, but it's not going to be much of an investment if you think about over time what you're investing in. So I would definitely look into that.
Clean water that's not full of chemicals and toxins and all that stuff that you normally get with municipal water, that would be killing your soil. And we're going to talk more about killing the soil in future episodes. So rain collection, it's something, if you're not doing, it's something that might be at least a topic of discussion in your gardening family to figure out if that's something that really would benefit you over the next many gardening years. Thank you very much for joining us today on the program. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've gathered information that will help you be a better gardener. And jump on over to the website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Drop us an email and let us know what you think of the program. For all music audio clips that you've heard on the program, we got them from freesfx.co.uk and audionutrix.com, 2 websites that provide free audio, royalty-free, and copyright-free material that we use to help liven up the podcasts.
And for the Paradigm Garden ad and for the Nest Alla Kombucha ad, those clips were provided by them.
Till next time, we will see you in the garden. I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
And all the links provided in this podcast are in the show notes and on the website. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is a production of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide and distributed in association with WI Garden Media.